All right, recording is on, I believe. Welcome to the second Ambient weekly meeting. So last week we kind of discussed about giving some of our newer folks a introduction about Ambient and save some room for them to ask questions. So we did send out the blogs and the videos. So I want to take a pause first of all just to ask if anybody have any questions about Ambient they want to ask, or would it be helpful that we do a brief intro, or you feel like you guys got it, so we can just get on to the agenda items for today. Oh, I see John and Ethan joined too. That's great.
Sorry, my speaker just started working.
It's perfect. We can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. So the question Lynn had asked was if people had a chance to review the slides and if people had specific questions or if they wanted to go over a quick overview.
Yeah, I think last week it was Mitch, and I think also there was a lady, Lewin, you were interested in that. I don't know if you guys have any specific questions or specific area, if we go through an intro one has to focus on.
Lynn,
I guess if not, then maybe, or Mitch, did you have something?
I was going to say I didn't have any particular questions. I think I was just hoping to get a bit of an overview of perhaps the code, how we can get involved from the community side, etc.
And I know John had started the work item list. I wonder if maybe that would be just the best place to start.
Yeah, it's a second item on the agenda. Yeah, I think that would be good because I think what Mitch you're asking for, I don't believe we have material out there as far as like the blog and video because they don't get to the code level. So that's a fair ask. Okay, so yeah, if there's no particular feedback, I think we should just go through the agenda. There's a couple of topics on there. So Daniel, why don't you start first?
All right, first one has to do with the image building. Currently, the Istio cuddle, at least that I can find, is from the initial commit when it was first merged or brought over to the upstream repo. Makes testing recent changes a little more difficult because you got to still build everything manually. So I was wondering what we could do to get that automated.
So does Ambient have its own particular changes to Istio cuddle that it requires?
Yes, it has its own profile manifests and a few other things that are all built into Istio cuddle.
So I saw Justin, you're presenting this task, the task John created. I guess this is probably what Daniel is asking. It would be good to track it as a task here, right? So people can try Ambient on the latest easily.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having trouble mapping where Daniel's, is this what Daniel was talking about, something on this page?
Ours is in the meeting notes from the meeting invite.
I thought that's what I was looking at.
I could put a link in chat too if that helps.
Yeah, it's the first item on the meeting notes.
Oh, okay, got it. Sorry, I went to the link that John's like. Okay, got it. Here, I'll show this instead.
Yeah, so if you use the Istio cuddle, for example, that was published in the Getting Started blog, it points at a specific commit. And so all the changes and bug fixes that we've done since won't get installed by it unless you manually target a different tag. But since it's not automated in that way, I'm having to do everything manually.
Yeah, I just want to look and see if we actually have post submit jobs that are creating all those things for you already. If not, we just have to create them, I would think.
I'm a little hesitant to start distributing our own like ambient version of IstioCuddle if all we're doing is distributing charts particular to ambient. I
I
know.
think saying IstioCuddle is kind of a misnomer. It's really just the Istio release, like all of it, the images, IstioCuddle.
Oh, this is everything. Okay,
Sorry,
that's all right.
Yeah. So the way I look at this, right? If I'm using Istio 116 dev build, I don't have to build it, right? There is a way, a wiki page that we teach people how to pull out the images. So I think the question is should we do something similar for ambient? There's at least one user asking in our channel for sure.
That makes sense to me. I guess the question would be, how long do we expect ambient to stay on its own branch? If that's a long-term thing, then we should definitely have dev builds set up for that branch. But we don't have, I think, anyone in the test and release working group anymore. And that would be where all that expertise is. 60 days, just to guess.
I'm glad, John, you didn't say a year. Okay.
Well, I was going to say there's still some people around.
Okay.
I was just going to.
I mean, it would take about 5 minutes to do this. It's probably more than we talked about.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So the only reason we
looks
didn't
like
do before is that before the ambient branch and experimental branches in general didn't have branch protection, and so we can't have something that publishes a release on a branch without branch protection, because then someone could go just merge some malicious thing without getting any approvals, right? But recently, or actually I think the PRSL, so maybe we can't do it quite yet, but it's close. We have the normal branch protection, so it's fine with me to add it now.
Yeah, if we get one of the other approvers, I think, and that one, and then, yeah, I think we only have to turn on the post-submit job, right?
Okay, so now my question is, John, do you know if other people outside of Google can do this, that other people can help out? I know you said 5 minutes, probably for you, but probably not for
yeah,
other people.
Yeah, PR on the test repo to configure the job. So
okay.
I can add a task on the issue and point to where it needs to change. So
yeah, I think that would be helpful. And if Daniel, you have bandwidth, maybe we could just help with that, so that we'll just have builds now.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think it's just a couple line change in one of the files, but I know I have thought of the same issue before. Is playing with ambient, how do I get something later than what's in the blog, and then the follow-up to that becomes, how do we update the blog to maybe point to something later, because obviously it's pointing to the original one, or do we want to do that? I don't know what the best way forward there is either.
So usually blogs are static. They tend to be designed to be point-in-time advice related to a particular Istio resource or a particular release. In this case, because we expect iteration to happen so quickly, would it make sense to spin off a part of Istio.io for ambient? Or just point it to latest, as Costin says?
yeah, I think we're overthinking this a bit. Like, users that are trying ambient are probably developers or sophisticated users. Like, we don't need to make this as easy as installing a real release. We probably shouldn't, right? It's okay to have a small barrier to entry, I think.
Okay.
Let's not joke with that, John. I mean, what barrier of entry Envoy has.
So maybe a wiki page is sufficient, like our current build? Because I think as long as they have one way, I would be happy.
Well, and I'm assuming, as John mentioned, if it's a developer, they would be able to, build everything locally anyway. So this is This is just the ability to, have somebody who doesn't want to pull a commit and build it to just pull from something that we built as part of the post submit.
How about starting some sort of weekly builds and put latest to them, and or daily builds and put latest to them, and that will satisfy both the need of people and the people who, and as the need of people who want to build from, to update daily and
I was gonna say, I think we do have latest that we append to the last one, but I'd have to go back and look.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
I like that it is.
cron job with daily build would be perfect for everyone.
Okay, Tom, you have a hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, Lynn. I started looking into this, and I think I really like the design direction that how this is going. In terms of build, I think what we have probably is okay, because I find when I trying to do this, it wasn't too difficult or anything. The only thing I find is that I think the document reference Lynn your personal repo, and it wasn't any kind of particular words about why you cannot use the ISTO, field deployment files. And I look into that, I find it's about the node affinity. That's the only difference. It could be, useful if we add a few words there. Why the deployment file need to be from this, personal repository. So that part I think it's fine. But I also noticed we have this on the experimental branch. My question is that because there are two. We have the master. We have this experimental. If we wait too long, will two branches diverge too much, or we don't really think that's a problem?
Yeah, so the sample, yeah, certainly when we write a blog, we will a little bit rush to get out in the days. We're happy to maybe add that as an additional sample in Istio if that's valuable. But you're right. The key thing is just not having everything placed on the same node to show user, hey, it actually can work across different nodes.
Right. I figured that part out. Yeah, that's okay. I mean, it's a little thing. I'm more kind of want to know what you guys think, because we are on the two different branches, right?
Yeah, so the branch, if you look at the meeting minutes from last week, yeah, we kind of had a lot of discussion on that. The main concern about not merging the branch to master is about the stability and scalability of Ambient today. And also there are re-innovation in zTunnel today. So there's a lot of changes coming through. Which is why it's in a branch at the moment.
Right. I understand that, but if we wait, let's say 60 days or something, will merge together be a bigger task?
Yeah, so I think this is probably a good way to get to the next task, which John opened, right? That has the list of the task to go towards merging back to master, or if we decided to do a 2.0 version of Istio. Right. So John, maybe we should start to go through that task you open now, because I think we're done with Daniel's topic. If everyone agrees.
Right. Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah. Thanks. So John, do you want to talk us through on this one?
Not really. I don't really want to go over every task in here. I wrote down a bunch of tasks that I thought needed to be done. It's not an inclusive list. A lot of them are like figure out what we're going to do for X, and then once we figure it out, there'll be a big list of specific items. But yeah, here's what I have down so far. Feel free to add more, and I'll probably add more as I think of things. But if you're wanting to contribute, I would go here, find one that sounds interesting and that you think you know how to do, and put your name next to it, or convert it to an issue and then assign yourself the issue.
Yeah, so I do have a question on split ztunnel daemon set to its own chat. Is that necessary for beta? Because the reason I'm asking is I find that it's easy to kind of provide explanation to our user as far as ztunnel. It's kind of like a CNI. It's part of your infrastructure. So this made me think: do we need to split to its own daemon set, to its own chat?
Well, it definitely can't be with Pilot, because Pilot is multiple instances per cluster, and ztunnel is one per cluster. If we really wanted to, we could put it with the CNI, but I don't see a reason to bundle them together when they're two different components.
It sounds like the larger question here between, I've seen some stuff about splitting ztunnel as well as things about how ztunnel interacts with revisions. The larger question is, what does an upgrade look like? Until we have a really good idea of what that is, I don't know that we can make statements about how it ought to relate to revisions or what chart it ought to be in.
So I guess that goes back to a fundamental question. How is the ztunnel today installed? I thought it's the installed part of the Istio CNI, but I may be wrong.
Today it's part of the EastGOD chart, which is why it has to move.
Oh, okay, I saw it now. Okay, which is why you think about split. Okay. Okay, yeah, I do agree with Mitch's point that we need to think through upgrade too. But now that I see it's part of HCOD, it does make sense to not be part of HCOD.
And the ztunnel, multiple versions, ztunnel running at the same time? Because we have sidecar sort of a deployment pattern. You have multiple sidecars. I mean, the traditional ISTIL way.
Yep, that's not how the ztunnel works though. It works more like the CNI, one per cluster. We may have a short period of time where you can have two for a transition, but it's not like sidecars where you can have 10 different versions indefinitely, and each one is certain pods use certain versions. It's kind of more baked into the infrastructure layer.
Okay.
Is the reason for that limitation that different versions of ztunnel are not compatible with one another, or what's the forcing function there?
It would be weird to have 10 daemon sets on every node for every version, right? Okay, I suppose we could do it, but I don't think we should really. Right?
The concern then is resource utilization.
Yeah, I mean, like we could do the same with CNI, right? We could have a CNI per version, but it's very complicated for minimal benefit.
So we're thinking ztunnel upgrade is most likely going to be in place upgrade that user needs to budget for when that ztunnel is down for upgrades. Because ztunnel is only one replica, right? As part of the daemon set, they would have to make sure there is high availability for their pods and services.
Not necessarily. You can have surge when you upgrade, so there doesn't have to be downtime necessarily. I don't think our redirection logic is going to be smart enough to not have downtime, because it's pretty hard to live migrate a TCP connection. We have some design doc that is in progress that we should probably share it on how this will work. So I think there's a lot of discussion that's already happened here between some folks.
Yeah, that would be good. So, because I don't quite understand when you say surge, do you mean scale out to more than one replica of the app, or
yeah, I mean, like when you
itself?
do a rollout in Kubernetes, like the standard practice is you spin up new pods, and then once they're ready, you tear down the old pods. You don't tear down the pod and then spin up a new pod and have downtime, right?
Okay, yeah, not that I understood, but not the ztunnel scale out. The ztunnel, so it will be done for that particular node that ztunnel is being upgraded, but
the ztunnel will have a surge. So new ztunnel will come up, and then the old ztunnel will go away.
Lynn, here's the docs from Kubernetes on how rolling updates can work with daemon sets. Basically, it will start up a new one before tearing down the old one.
Okay, cool. Okay, that's great. Okay, I thought it's only Demon said it's only one replica, so you couldn't search. Okay,
I
that's
think
very
it's a
cool.
recent addition. I'm not sure how many versions
Oh,
support it yet.
oh, very cool. I need to put that in the meeting minutes.
And then is there any concern with downgrading a Z tunnel, assuming you try to upgrade your Z tunnel and something now is bad? Is there any inherent risk to a downgrade that is unique?
I think someone needs to go write a design doc for how upgrades work.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you say there's already some design doc or some discussion already started? I mean, how could other people help, I guess?
Yeah, I thought I heard Martin on our side talking about it, but I don't know much more beyond that. So I was going to.
Martin's been talking about it for like the internal Google GKE case. I don't think he's done much on the external side. Well, the short answer is internally in GKE, we're just going to do a daemon set upgrade, and the downtime is quite minimal if you get the settings right. So that should work in OSS too, but he hasn't like written that down. If that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. So I'll write leader, owner, and doc. So maybe, yeah, so I can do this offline. So John, maybe we can enhance your document if we believe this is part of the beta requirements, right? Be able to do upgrades.
And by the way, I'm fine with volunteering Martin to own this. I did tell him to do it. He just hasn't gotten to it yet. So.
Okay.
And if someone else wants to own it, that's fine too. But.
Okay, I'll put Martin link down so he knows. Okay, cool. Does anyone else have any questions on this list? Oh, does anyone feel there are things that needs to be added? Is there any update? Oh, so John, last week you mentioned about a doc about improve Envoy and the Z tunnel. Is there any update on that?
I think we'll be ready to talk about it informally probably next week. We're like, at least internally at Google, we're kind of converging on an opinion. And once we've converged on an opinion, we'd like to get the opinion of the rest of the community. But there's a couple of paths forward that could make sense. So we'll talk about all of them. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I assume right now it's still like two options. And
yeah, it's basically Envoy or REST.
Okay. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And basically both could be made. The summary of where we are now, really, we have a path to get Envoy actually like dramatically better. But even if we do that, it's not going to be as good as a REST implementation. So there's just like a decision that has to be made about whether we want to, like, as a community, take on writing a custom Z tunnel.
I see. But how do you know it's not going to be as good as Rust without writing it?
I mean, if you just do like basic, like minimal Envoy config forwarding versus minimal Rust config forwarding of like H2 Connect, Rust is like quite a bit better. So we don't really know, you know. That's certainly up for debate, but maybe I'll say we think Rust will be significantly better.
We also are able to control it more. Like, so with Envoy, because we're kind of abusing Envoy in a lot of ways to implement a Z tunnel for the scale. It wasn't really designed for this. And so we'll be able to really just put together the features that we need, and for this particular feature set that it's going to do.
Okay, that's good to know.
But Ethan, I think we probably should write a pretty clean doc explaining not just what our suggestion is, but like kind of the
The
reasoning.
trade-off. Yeah.
Yeah, I really look forward to that next week.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Tom, I think you have another hand.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to.
Okay, that was a previous hand. No worries.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else we should discuss, John's? The initial task. Certainly, there's a lot of item that needs help. Andre, go ahead.
Yes, I had a question. Like last time you mentioned that Solo's going to do some stuff with CNI, but the section on the CNI for ambient Tesla beta is a little bit small. So is there can we expand on what exactly Solo is planning to do with CNI? And is that part of ambient going to beta, or is that something separate?
Yeah, so that is one of the item, like the long-term plan for redirection in Ambient. So the current way we're doing redirect from the application container to Z-tunnel is using IP tables and routes. So we're actively looking, Yuval on our team is looking at rewrite that using eBPF, using socket map potentially. So yeah, that is the item, which is why Yuval is assigned for that. Does that answer your question, Andre?
Thanks.
Okay, cool. Actually, that triggered a question I have. John, you said that CNI has been found to use high CPU and memory for small clusters. Can you provide some details on that? John, you are muted if you're talking.
Wait, sorry, what was
Sorry, my laptop froze. I was compiling something and it killed my laptop. Yeah, no, I can't provide more details really. I just noticed that every time I'm running a cluster, the CNI uses like a crazy amount of resources. Like it's 100 times more than the Z-tunnel, and it's doing basically nothing. So we should find out why, and then we should fix it. But I don't know why yet.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you have any tests because Daniel said he didn't notice that, but maybe we'll double check.
John, did you have a lot of workload?
Like I'm talking like empty cluster, 100 or 100 M CPU usage all the time. So it's probably some loop or something that isn't behaving correctly.
Okay, interesting. Just small cluster and no applications, just Istio.
And I've noticed it like on 50 different clusters over the past 2 months. So I don't think it was just one weird one-off case.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, thank you, John. Okay, if there's no other question, I think we should move to the next topic. Daniel, go ahead.
Yeah, so the last one is VMs. I know we haven't really put any work into that part, but it was something that I've been looking at. So essentially, the config when you use the ambient profile breaks for even communications with sidecard workloads. We were doing a little troubleshooting today, and I thought I wrote this down, but essentially it's the traffic gets to the east-west gateway for the sidecard workloads, but then the east-west gateway no longer seems to recognize how to handle the connection and just terminates it. So we expected the ambient ones to not work because it's not configuring any endpoints, but the sidecar workload should still work. And then we basically just sat around kind of scratching our heads, not really able to make a lot of progress on what changed and why the sidecar workloads no longer work.
So is this just a matter of someone taking a look at the bug?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience when it comes to Envoy, so I'm not really sure what to look for here. But we sat in a call with Greg Lynn and I and another one of our coworkers, troubleshooting everything. And basically, we could connect to the sidecar from the east-west gateway using curl, and we can see in the logs that traffic goes from the VM to the east-west gateway, but for some reason in the east-west gateway, it's not getting routed correctly.
Hey, John, could you triage this one? And I think it's one that probably Steven or Brian should look at.
Sure. I mean, it would probably be good for non-Google folks to understand how to debug ambient as well.
Yeah, so John, actually, if you can give us some hints, that would be helpful. I think maybe we can write the code to fix this. So I guess the current challenge, at least from my perspective, is so first of all, when you run, let's say I have sleep on my VM, right, and I'm calling hello world in my Kubernetes pod, right. So on that sleep. So when I run in ambient profile, right, the Envoy that's been bootstrapped on my VM, I think it's configured as ztunnel because today we saw the internal upstream cluster, which is very complicated to debug. That's where we kind of stop right there.
It should not be configured as ztunnel. So if that's happening, then something went wrong.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I'm interested to see, how could that happen? Yeah. Because in the regular sidecar case, or just regular Envoy on the VM, we verified, Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong, we verified there was no reference to the internal upstream cluster, in the Envoy config.
Yeah, in the config dumps, we were seeing some differences in the tunnel. I can't remember the word now. Basically, we were seeing H2 as one of the tunnel configs that we weren't seeing in the non-ambient side. So it's almost like it's getting configured to connect to ztunnel just because the ambient profile is enabled.
We're talking about the transport sockets and
Transport sockets. There we go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to look at it more to debug, but you should be able to trace through the config and see where it's going wrong compared to the non-ambient profile.
Yeah, so John, I think if you can give us some hints, that would be great because Daniel has the environment with the working one and not working one, and we're kind of stuck on when the traffic gets to the Envoy internal listener or upstream cluster, where would it, how could this happen, first of all? Second of all, what's to look next?
Yeah, I mean, you should look at the config and the logs and see what listeners and clusters are going through and see where either it differs from the non-ambient profile or where it looks incorrect. You know, I mean, going through the east-west gateway and the VM sidecar and the app sidecar, that's quite a lot of listeners. So there's a lot of places to look, but you know, all the info is there in the config dumps and the logs. So.
Would it be helpful to do like a joint debugging session with Steven?
Yeah, I was going to ask for that. It's just John, maybe it would just take, oh, Steven, maybe it would just take 15, 30 minutes.
I think
of
Steven
your
would be a
time.
good choice because he knows this code pretty well.
Okay, is he around or
Yeah.
is he on vacation? Okay.
No, he's
Okay,
there.
so we can reach out to Steven, maybe set up a short debugging session, and John will invite you as optional if you're available.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. The reason I wasn't jumping to do that was I was specifically hoping to get people other than me and Steven, you know, familiar with debugging, but that's fine as well.
Yeah, I think we can set the like Steven maybe can be there to like guide and answer questions, but the goal would be kind of training.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not like we're asking help without doing any investigation. We kind of debug it for an hour ourselves first. Yeah. Okay, very cool. I think that's very helpful. So Daniel, let's sync with Steven offline for this. And I saw there's some chats going on with Carsten. Carsten, do you want to mention anything?
No, nothing in particular.
Okay, I think your comment about simplify Istio-D, that would apply to both Rust and if we can simplify Envoy as well, right? The biggest thing is whether Istio-D supports sidecar today with not sidecar today.
In theory, yes, but simplifying Envoy may be a bit complicated and takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
I'm personally interested in, having proxyless support and other, kind of having as many implementation as possible. So I don't really care. All of the above is perfect for me. But I think Rust is the best decision for, fast development and best quality probably.
Okay, cool. Sounds like there's a lot of preference on Rust from the Google team. And with the prototype already exists too.
Well, my preference is May is the best implementation win, basically, but I think the best start is Rust.
Yeah, I would say each member of the Google team has strong opinions. But I don't think we've quite converged, though we're closer than we're pretty close.
Yeah, and we don't have Quat here, so
yeah.
Oh, by the way, we have Steven now. So Steven, we'll sync with you offline on this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone have any other topics? I don't see any other topics. Oh, anyone have any questions before we close out? All right. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.